Well, I mean, I'm sure that this is not typical because you're always on the side asking questions, and if you're anything like me, where I don't feel so important, but in my mind, the first time I heard of you and I saw, I mean, I'd read some of your books and didn't even know when I was living in LA, and I hadn't yet made contact with you, but how many books have you written so far? You said 17?
I've written and co-written 17.
Okay.
So, there's the ones that I've done just by myself, and, the ones that I've written with someone else. Like my very first book was done with your hometown boy, Bill Zehme.
Right.
We did a book called The Bob Book, a celebration of the ultimate okay guy.
That's good.
A bestseller, my friend, my bestseller.
Oh, really?
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yes. Right out of the gate. Well,
So,
there's a million guys named Bob.
no.
They have birthdays every day, and there's Father's Day. And it's a choice, and I can do this for an hour. So ask me your next question.
No, give me a couple more Bobs. Give me a couple more stories.
Well, I mean, what we did was we created a Bob Sir. Well, the bottom line is, I used to see Bob everywhere. I mean, it's examples, from Bob's Big Boy, all the way, right? And one day, my wife and I were driving back from San Francisco. We pulled into a parking lot to get something to eat, just, at where the 5 starts up near, up north. And we pulled in a lot, and I looked up, and there in big pink neon lights was the word Schmorga Bob. And I thought, when Schmorga and Bob get together, it really means something. Then I called Bill, and Bill says, yeah, well, my dad's a Bob. So we concocted the Bob survey, and we sent it to many famous. We have Bobs from Bob Hope, Bob Dylan, you name the famous Bob, we have that, and the second tier Bobs. Bob, I can't remember now, but he was a big DJ in Chicago. Anyway.
Bob. Well, give me some tertiary Bobs.
Well, I mean, I could read them to you, but
well, how did you hook up with Bill?
What's that?
How did you hook up with Zehme?
Zehme and I were both writing for Playboy, doing 20 questions and stuff. This was in the mid 80s. Our editor there introduced us, and we had a common loathing for celebrity culture, even though we exploited the hell out of it. And the basis of a lifelong friendship. So we got all these Bobs, and the only ones that were reluctant were the singing and dancing Bobs, like Bob Seger. They were either in the studio or doing something. But we got Bob Dylan, and they all filled out the Bob survey, and then we wrote chapters based on all that, and then we we put an ad in Rolling Stone and got a lot of responses. So after that, people said, God, I'd like to write. I thought of that book. I'd like to write a book. How do I write a book? And I said, yeah, how are you at the gas station work? Can you pump gas? Because this is easier.
What about Bob Elliott of Bob and Ray?
Absolutely.
You did?
Yes, Eubanks, Elliott. Well, they're all in there. They're all in there.
Oh, seriously. My goodness. And okay, so what's the book called again? So we could let everyone know.
Well, it's out of print, unfortunately, okay. But you can still get it on used book sites. The Bob Book, as opposed to The Book of Bob and Bob's Book, The Bob Book.
Where was the Bob's Big Boy?
You'll let me walk around a minute here.
Please go ahead.
Bob.
That's a fine cover.
Absolutely. And the secret is that the man in the chair is not named Bob.
Is that David in the chair?
No, I don't know. That's what they did.
Oh, funny.
And this is one of the, some of the covers have this sweater over here with Bob Newhart.
Sure.
But they've left out Bob, so just a sweater.
That's fantastic. I knew about the book, but I didn't know to the extent how deeply you dove into Bob.
Oh, it's a celebrate, and it doesn't work with any other name. Although, because believe me, we were encouraged to do many other names, we said no.
Bob's a lot better. I think if I was going to choose any name, it would be Larry because it's a name that just makes me laugh, no
Right.
matter what.
Bob is a name that just rolls off the tongue. It's got
Right.
neither positive or negative. It's the most common name in advertising for men. We did all that stuff. It's all in there. It's like a
So
a celebration.
you say that kind of lightly, that, or maybe you don't, with regard to your the friendship that you built with Bill on the basis of having just loathing celebrity culture. What? Yeah, you'd really worked in entertainment for what, like 15 years up until the point that you published, right?
Well, I mean, I started working in entertainment in 1969 with my first review of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young in my college newspaper, and started there. And I'm still always in it. Yeah, I did Playboy stuff for 30 something years. Playboy interviews, Playboy, 20 questions, checking ins. Um, yeah, I mean, it's not it's not enough loathing to quit,
Right.
but it was yeah,
What was it incidental? I mean, I know that you moved. Tell us the story. You moved from New York City, and then just take me up to what you were, what neighborhood you grew up in, and how you sort of got bit by the rock and roll bug, if not the writing bug.
I moved from Teaneck, New Jersey, previously lived in the Bronx with my family when I was 14. On the day that the Beatles landed at Idlewild, I guess, I don't know, it had been renamed JFK then, on February 7th, 1964.
Right.
They arrived, we left, came to California. I'd been to California once before on a vacation in 1959 and cried going home because it was really, great. So we moved to Northridge, California, site of the future earthquake, and went to high school, a little bit of junior high, went to high school. Uh, I mean, when the girls next door are holding a dance party in the breezeway playing Beatles songs, that was the era where we all got into music. And we went to see concerts. I don't know what my first one was, but I certainly remember painting my parents' um, porch covering in order to afford 2 tickets to the Rolling Stones at the Hollywood Bowl on July 25th, 1966. So that was great. And I just was into the music completely. When I was in 12th grade, I broke my leg. I was really pretentious. I wore sunglasses and I had a cane, and I went down to, well, I didn't like the way I looked in glasses. I went down to the Aquarius Theater. I, it's actually before that. I hung out with the Doors. It was 1967. I don't know. So then when I got to college, I tried to do political science and stuff like that, but I didn't want to get up for biology at 8 in the morning, before 8 in the morning. And I started writing for the school newspaper. And listen, you saw a picture of the old me. I had hair down to here and a mustache, and I looked like John Lennon, some people say, and not as handsome. But hey, rock and roll,
That's arguable.
meet girls, go to concerts for free.
Well, how long was your hair in 66 and 67? I would imagine you were like a sophomore or junior in high school, right?
As a senior.
Senior.
Yeah, my hair was, in my high school picture, I had to put my hair behind my head and wear glasses without glass in them because they were too thick and reflective. And you would have seen the cameraman, not me. But right after that, it just kept going. I let it, it got down to, down to below what you can see. So, and until 1974 when I cut it off.
Was Vietnam sort of a specter in your life, or we just knew that you weren't going? And
My draft number was 77, and I could have gone if it wasn't for my Marine Corps Reserve Colonel ophthalmologist who said, if he loses his glasses in the jungle, he'll be dead before he puts his spares on. I'm functionally, I don't know how familiar you are with a eye exam, the 4-opter, the machine that they put up there, and then they say 1 or 2, 3 or 4. You know this machine?
Yeah,
They
of course.
set it. I'm all the way at the end of the settings.
Jesus.
All right. Now I don't. I've had cataract surgery, so I have lenses in here, so I don't need any glasses.
Yeah, I've got the progressive lenses. Those are
I couldn't do that because it's just makes me nauseous.
were
But
were your folks first of all, you have an older brother, correct?
no, I
He
have
was
a younger
younger.
brother who's passed away.
Right. Tell me about him.
He was a great guy, 2.5 years younger than me, never in school together with me. He became an engineer, a real estate broker, went in the Navy, um, you know, was a great dad.
Did he
You
share
know,
your love of rock and roll and music?
uh, no. Well, I'm sure he did like it, but we never really. I was like a single child, so was he. Just because
So,
different circles. He
so-
died of pancreatic cancer in 2016.
yeah, I know. I mean, I saw that, and he looked like a lovely guy, and you certainly wrote nice things about him, and that's it's really uh, the best thing you could say about somebody when they go is just that they were just nice, that they were good parents, that they, all this other stuff that people think that is important because you're not remembered for any of that other thing.
He,
You know,
he had a tougher life than I did, and he endured um, magnificently. He was a better man than I, and I miss him.
were your folks sort of blown away by all of the changes going on in this country? I mean, I would imagine you grew up in a very European type of household. What were they like?
European to the extent that my mother expected me to stay home until I got married. That Europe, but then she lost her father in a concentration camp, and and she waited for years for him to reappear, not knowing that other people in the family knew that he was gone, and so she wanted to cling. She clung and wanted us close. European. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't know. I don't think so. I mean, the desserts were pretty fabulous. Okay,
Right.
so Viennese. She was Viennese, so a lot of Sachertorte, and
And waltzes.
yeah. So you know, um, they both spoke German and other stuff, and I don't know, European. Um,
So,
I think one of them was a Democrat, one was a Republican. I'm not sure who was who, and they were pretty cool. And I know my dad once told me if he caught me with marijuana, he'd turn me in. I said I don't have any marijuana. I was actually on acid.
right. Did you ever try the Owsley Orange Sunshine acid that everyone brags about?
I wouldn't know. It's like like my son tells me. He says Nixon won 49 states in 1972, but so many people voted for McGovern. It's impossible that they did.
Yeah.
So how many people really tried orange? I mean, I've tried. I put a lot of stuff on my mouth that I shouldn't have.
That's you stopped doing that since, correct?
Oh yeah. Is that like you still beat your wife? No, I haven't. I wouldn't do that.
So okay, you write your first review. Do you remember? Was it a good review of CSNY?
Sure. Badly written, just awful. But yeah, I love them. And then went on to see Neil Young 40 times, and went on the road with Crosby and Nash as a record company functionary in '76. Yeah, I did a lot of stuff that I don't remember much, but
So you don't. I mean, do you have? I was telling that my friend Jude, who wrote this book about America, that I know, and she had told me, like, I think that she had read your Rolling Stone article about traveling with them to Hawaii.
oh, America.
Yes, but you
Yeah,
must.
yeah. My last interview was on the plane to Hawaii. It was great.
Was just the landscape changing, or were you just thinking like it's time to start really getting into writing more books, or was it how are you how What was a day in the life like of like a 28-year-old to 34-year-old David Rensin?
Well, I think they're probably pretty different. At 28, I had my one and only job in media, where I was a senior editor for Chic, CHIC magazine, the better half of Hustler Empire. Um, Prior to that, I'd spent, say, 6 years freelancing for Rolling Stone, Every Music Magazine, a couple little record reviews at Playboy, LA Times, but somehow the gas was running out. I'd get too many assignments and not actually do them all. It was, I was writer blocked, which is, I'm never writer blocked now, but it was just, and it was intense. We were just going everywhere, doing everything, seeing all the music and stuff, my friends, and I got a job. I'm not sure I remember the question, but I'll keep going. I
Oh,
got a job. I got a job for 18 months. I got out of that and then was solidly in with Playboy for the next 30 years, doing articles, stuff like that. Interviews, Q&As, Playboy interviews, everybody from Scorsese to Cindy Crawford to Bill Gates to Jerry Seinfeld to Shirley MacLaine to Brian Gumbel, you just name it. Back in the days when they actually had interviews that went on for a little bit and a lot of 20 questions. But, you're a cog in the machine and you go out there and make the money and do this thing. But, I guess at some point you think, well, I can do something myself, maybe I can do something myself. But I've never really been one of those guys who has something to say. I mean, in the sense that I have a political thing that I really want to hammer home, or I have a hobby like my friend Bill, which is, Sinatra and the Rat Pack, and really gets into it.
wow.
I know how to operate my computer, and I like to surf. I knew enough about surfing to be able to write the book about, Mickey Dora, arguably the most notorious California surfer ever, et cetera, et cetera. But, I was just doing all this stuff, and then I did the Bob book with Bill, and then it was like, I don't know much about that was 1991, which is a palindrome, just like Bob is, so it all fit together. But then a friend of mine, a well-known writer named Steve Oney, was called by Hyperion Books to ask if he would submit some clips to see if one of their someone they had signed up to write a book wanted him to co-write, and I can't remember what it was, but the essentially it could have only been two people, Tim Allen or Sinbad. So Steve said, "No, I don't have time. Call David Rensin." And I owe Steve my career because it turned out to be Tim Allen, and I had done a 20 questions with him, which he really loved. So we met, and I wrote 2 books with him. And the first book was a huge, huge bestseller, and was #1 book, while at the same time the TV show was #1, at the same time as book, TV, film, Santa Claus. The Santa Claus was
Right.
#1. And so my career has been, I got some royalties, and my career has been downhill from there.
Oh,
But
congrats.
so,
Do you think were you having writer's block because you just weren't into it after a while? I'm talking about when you were writing just for rock magazines and freelancing and
I was having writer's block because I was insecure, because I hadn't yet figured out that I'm the expert, whether I really am or not. And if the editors thought that they knew better, they'd be doing the writing. But no, they wanted to find the guy who they thought could do the job. So I would doubt myself. I would rewrite the first paragraph 100 times,
yeah.
or 10 anyway. So, it's like I was insecure. I didn't learn to just turn the voice off and trust myself. And what changed all that was working at Chic and editing stories from writers that I loved and admired, and assigned stories. And they would come in, and they weren't perfect either. And I thought, oh, hey, what do you know? So I helped fix them up. They were fine, but I mean, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't roll off your fingertips like
Yeah.
gold.
I mean,
So yeah, it
that's
gave me
good for you.
confidence. And I went out, and Playboy asked me to do, for quite a bit of money, an investigation into the adult film industry.
Right.
So I spent a year almost interviewing so many, you know, stars, actors, behind the scenes people. There was some other stuff about child porn, snuff films, which they eventually dispensed with because they wanted to say, it was at the time that the VHS Betamax tape, you know, home porn was, you know, a big deal. So it was a great story. You know,
The
I
golden
wrote that.
age.
What's that?
It was sort of the golden age of porn. I
It was prior to the single girl video tape stuff. It was like still, you could still go to the adult theaters. So,
so
you know, I saw Ron Jeremy get fluffed by Samantha Fox, and
and
never
you
got
never got over it.
and never got over it, right. And you know, the warthog. So you know, I just anyway, I started doing the books, and I just thought books are great because books are a long-term project, not something you wrap fish in the next day.
Right.
And you know, that earned me my leverage and my visibility. Playboy, I did a lot of great stuff for it. You know, of course, what rings in my ears is somebody who said, if you actually did all that stuff for a magazine that people read, you'd be really famous. So
Well, were you mindful of this weight falling off you, and or mindful of the fact that, wow, I really shouldn't be so hard on myself. I mean, I personally know what it's like to labor over a paragraph for a day and then finally getting it, and it's just the really most masochistic thing to go through. When did you realize, like, I don't have to do that anymore? Is it because you found imperfections in people that you'd really admired?
well, I mean, that was the catalyst, but no, it's because I just learned to, what's the saying? I mean, just to write it, I can go back and edit it. And
Right.
I mean, you know, I've got every file from every book I've done, and I'm sure there's like, you know, 500 versions, unfortunately not sequentially numbered.
So
But
after Tim Allen, what that sort of opens the gates. Like, what are some of the next important projects that you think
I did
about?
Tim Allen #1,
Mhm.
Don't Stand Too Close to a Naked Man. At that point, I interviewed Gary Shandling for the second time. This was for the Playboy interview. And I said, Gary, how's the book that you signed up a year ago? Well, I haven't really gotten to it. I said, great, you want some help? So he hired me to help him write his book. And, you know, that went pretty well. Gary is a fascinating, wonderful guy who, as I'm often said, will schedule 3 meetings with you, but cancel 4 just to be safe. Um, and you know, we sat there and I interviewed him as his persona as Larry Sanders. So this is the autobiography of Larry Sanders. Um, and but after we turned half of the book in, he had to get back to his show, so we stopped and we left it. And it was too bad. But it was, you know, it was great. And then after that, I did Jeff Foxworthy's book, No Shirt, No Shoes, No Problem. And after that, I did Tim Allen's second book, I'm Not Really Here, in which I spent some time with him in his dressing room at ABC working on a concept because, of course, they wanted the same thing as Don't Stand Too Close to a Naked Man, which is sort of like, you know, an exploration of maleness and his biography. And Tim was into quantum physics and outer space and stuff like that, you know, and it was fascinating. And he and I cooked up this idea in which he used those as comic foils to search for a hood ornament for his car that he was giving away. And it went through every room in his house, and that was another chapter, and about his having found the answer to life in a cave in a plateau in Peru. And I loved it, you know, and we just made it up from whole cloth. But then, you know, comedians started getting lots and lots, you know, more money. I think Whoopi Goldberg got $6 million for her book, and I didn't
Jeez.
do that one. Um, but and then things started to fail, you know, and so I moved on. You know,
Were comedians
um,
difficult to deal with aside from,
yeah,
or let me ask you this, like, was there a commonality? Because obviously these guys have this alter ego when they're performing and then the public perception. Was there something different
no,
about the,
no, no, they're great. I've never had a bad experience.
good?
Um, you know, it's Tim was fun. You know, look, these guys, looking at a book about yourself is like standing in front of a bulldozer and thinking it's going to flatten me. So any help I could give, you know, which starts with saying, uh, I come start from the point of view that you're totally busy and you don't have a lot of time, so I'll be really efficient. Also, I'm going to ask you anything I want. I want you to tell me everything, which is the name of my website. Um, and if we don't want to use it, we don't. It's under your control. It's your book, you know. So Tim and I would write and laugh. Jeff and I, Foxworthy and I laughed so hard at stuff we nearly passed out. Chandling was fun, you know, and educational. I mean, he was he would always go, "That's really funny. Did you write that joke or did I write that joke?" And I would always say, "Oh, you wrote that joke. You wrote it." And he'd go, "Yeah, yeah." But he knew and I knew. And then he would turn the heat up and twist it up 3 notches and make it brilliant. He was just
Wow.
really great at that.
It,
Unfortunately, after he sued his manager, Brad Gray, and I was writing a book with Brad's partner, Bernie Brillstein, I now became in the enemy camp, so to speak. So we never went back to finish the book.
oh
And then
no.
Gary finished the book by putting 83 pages of pictures in there and cutting what we had done down to sort of S.J. Perlman-esque size little bits. And he put it out, and I thought it wasn't very good. But I have the real stuff. I can't do anything with it because I don't own it, but I have it.
Even with,
Um,
Brad Grape is deceased as well, right?
yes, Brad, Bernie, gone.
What, so
Um,
is that how you, okay, so you met Bernie via Gary, right? Or how did you meet him?
met Bernie. I met, well, I talked to Bernie back when I did a Harold Ramis article for Vanity Fair, because Ghostbusters. And Bernie was a producer in Ghostbusters, a movie that made so much money so quickly he said they couldn't stiff him on the profits.
Shit.
And and yeah, so I met him then, and then I met him backstage at Jeff Foxworthy in Las Vegas. I said, "I really like to do a book with you." And he goes, kid, I don't want to do a book. Yeah, I'm not interested. And I said, okay. And then I met him again up at HBO Comedy Festival in Aspen, maybe a year later. And I said, Bernie, I'd like to do a book with you. He goes, kid, I tried it. I thought, you tried it? Yeah, I tried it. The second question she asked was about Brad Pitt. I said, out, get out. Because, you know, I said, okay. And then he sort of let me hang out with him. I mean, I knew Dennis, I knew the guys in the HBO, I mean, in the Brillstein Gray stable, you know, the comedians, Bill Maher and Dennis Miller, et cetera, time more, I'm sure. And Bernie let me hang out with him. I mean, in places where nobody, you know, Bernie hanging out with the head of HBO, with Ari Emanuel, with all these people, you know, and I was just hanging there. And you know, at the very last night where Dennis Miller and I went to see Ray Romano, and Bernie's in the audience, and I go over there and I said, Bernie, thank you so much for letting me hang out. He goes, oh yeah, kid, listen, why don't you call me and come by my office? And that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship, which he said was based on my having manners. So,
Have you
I
seen
mean,
people who don't have manners and just don't get to where they want?
no, I think that a lot of people don't have manners, unfortunately, get to
Right.
where they want, and I would rather be there instead of them. But yeah, Bernie, and then I went to see Bernie, and we wrote this great book, which got universally good reviews. You know, Where Did I Go Right? And then, you know, I don't know, what did I do after that? There's a, you know, Chris Rock, Rock This. And then, I don't know. I mean, Bernie #2, I did, I'm not sure what I did in between.
But you essentially, I mean, it's one thing to get hired, but you found something in all of these, if you want to call them interviewees or personalities, that you were genuinely interested in.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, for example, Louis Zamperini, right?
just going to ask you.
Okay, so Louis Zamperini, um, celebrated in the book Unbroken. I wrote his autobiography with him 7 years earlier, back when I didn't have, I hadn't just come off of writing Seabiscuit, and I didn't have a huge promotional company behind me. I mean, it's Harper's, and they thought Louis, 86 years old, too old to do TV, and they were very wrong. But anyway, his wife was someone I met years before. Let's see, this was 2000, so yeah, 82. Yeah, years before, when I was writing a profile of an article on Mickey Dora, the surfer from California, the guy who had a life off the beach, was on the run from the FBI, served some time, was notoriously, you'd have to read the book. It's a great book. If the author does say so himself.
I mean,
I met his wife
yeah.
because Louis's wife, because I didn't know it was Louis's wife, but her name is Cynthia Applewhite, and she's deceased now. But she was a friend of Mickey's, and when I called Mickey's dad to interview to see if he could put me in touch with Mickey, he told Mickey, and Mickey told Cynthia and said, "Go check him out." I spent 4 months with Cynthia having breakfasts and hanging out and talking and trying to prove myself, and fending off Mickey, saying, "Well, I'll talk if he buys me a first class ticket to Frankfurt so I can get out of this country." And eventually Mickey and I met and we talked for this story in California magazine. 20 years later, I stay in touch with Cynthia. We're friends because she wants me to write a book on Mickey.
Mhm.
And one day she calls me up and she goes, "Oh, hi, David. Oh, I meant to call my friend Norman, but listen, you can watch my husband on TV tonight." Now, it wasn't 2020, it was the other one on CBS, but I don't know. But anyway, so I said, "Okay, great." So I watched the story of Louis Zamperini based on, the story of the 1998 search for people to,
The Greatest Generation.
greatest generation. Well,
Right.
I mean, but the thing is, the Winter Olympics then was held in Nagano, Japan, and so Louis had been a prisoner of war in Nagano. So the producers called up thinking he was dead, but he wasn't. So they ended up making a 40-minute film, which turned out to be a winner of some awards. I watched this and I immediately called Cynthia and said, "Oh my God, this is great. Who's doing the book?" She said, "Oh, you want to do the book, Dave?" And I said, "Absolutely." Well, we just got an agent. So I talked to the agent. I ended up doing the book. And it was, I did it for less money, but Louis is so fascinating. And, I just spent a lot of time with him and wrote this book. And he had written the book before in 1955, but it was very Billy Graham, religiously oriented. And Universal was going to make a movie, but I think Kirk Douglas was going to be in it, but he ended up doing Spartacus. And so they sat on the property for years. So I did that with Louis. And yeah, I find something fascinating. I mean, it just, when you're not doing a 20 questions or even a Playboy interview, which you can spend hours doing, it just really allows you to get into the person, and I don't have an ego about things, they're in control. I have strong opinions and I'll share them. But I like, and I get to inhabit their bodies, their minds. I speak in their voice. Bernie would, told me, he says, he read the manuscript of Where Did I Go Out on a Plane to London. He called me up and says, "Well, I knew the story, but I was never bored." I said, Jesus Christ, that's great.
That's a compliment.
Yes.
Is it because you got his voice based on the interviews and
Yes, because you learn the tics of these people. Because he has sayings that he would say, well, kid, or I swear it's true. I mean, just, but you get the voice. Yeah.
but what
And
about
that's what
What about Louis? Like, what was the 87-year-old Louis like when you first encountered him?
overbooked. Just,
Overbooked.
he was, he just quit skateboarding, but he had a Subaru Outback. He would go up to the mountains. He would ski. He was very involved. We met at the church where he had his office. He was, always out speaking to high school and organization and other organizations, sharing his story. So he was, but we had a great time. And then, as we finished our book, he gets a letter from Laura Hillenbrand. Hi, I discovered you while I was doing Seabiscuit. I would really like to write your story. And he said, what are we going to tell her? I said, I don't know. Let's just tell her that we just finished his book. And thank you. And, they struck up a little friendship. And a year and a half later, she said, I can't get it out of my mind. I want to do it. He said, okay. They never met. She did 75 interviews. And mine is in Louis' voice, so it's very personal and it's more emotionally accessible. Hers is more of a historian approach, where she talked to a bunch of people. Louis' brother, I did talk to his brother also, and his sisters, and other people who were involved in the pilot of the plane that crashed, um, and she did a lot of research, and that was sold 5 million copies, so more power to her. But we sold a bunch of copies too, and ultimately, to fast forward, in 2013, I got a call after the movie came out. I got a call saying, "Hey, you guys want to finish that second book you almost started?" See, Louis and I were going to do a book called All Things Work Together for Good, and tell stories from his life, some of which hadn't been in any of those books. And then he put it off because he's too overbooked. Always doing stuff. So he did Unbroken. He did the movie with Angelina Jolie, which I'm glad, because Angelina would come over and get into bed with him, and they'd cuddle, and I think she even bought us a bed. I'm not sure, but ultimately, I said sure, absolutely. So for the last year of his life, I went up there and we did these stories, some of which were expanded versions of stuff you knew, and Louis' wisdom, and it's called Don't Give Up, Don't Give In. And we finished it. I sent it in 2 days before he died, or after he died, I can't remember. And it was a big bestseller. So
was there any way that you could have gotten Angelina to come and cuddle with the two of you guys when you were working on that second book?
I don't think so. That's not my fantasy.
What about
Brad? I wouldn't mind. I mean, I met Angelina and Brad was by far the friendliest.
seemingly cuddlier?
What's that?
Seemingly cuddlier than his wife.
Yeah, I mean, he was great.
Yeah.
Because I told him the story. I said, listen, I wrote Bernie's book, and he goes, oh, great. Oh, and I told him the story about Bernie throwing the woman out who said, hey, what about Brad Pitt? He loved it. So yeah, he was very nice. Angelina was a little cautious because I said, hey, I wrote Louis' book before Unbroken.
Right.
It's like the radar must have gone like, oh, what's going to happen now? Is there trouble? And I said, no, I just like the movie.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I loved so much about hearing him speak is that, and I'm not very religious, if anything, Passover coming up, although I did read something about how in Soviet Russia they changed, they made it more specific to their cause, like the story of Passover. So I think I'm going to do the same thing, because we've all been in our own like Mitzrayim or Pharaoh type of thing with COVID and all this craziness before. But I've come to realize that I do respect so many people, not because of they're religious, but some of the most amazing people I've met, born again Christian or Orthodox Jew, and or Muslim or something, and I could never really get my head wrapped around faith, but it seems to work for them. Did working with somebody, and I don't know about your religious, other than being Jewish, uh, was it easy or difficult to get your head wrapped around Louis's faith and his Christianity?
No,
Because
no, no problem. No, listen,
good,
I love being Jewish. I believe it's the religion that allows me to not believe in God, okay, and still be Jewish. Um, I Louis, I loved asking Louis to explain his religious concepts to me, and he's a fundamentalist, and I nowhere near where I'm at. Um, and but it's great. I got a chance to ask him all this stuff, and he said great things, that he sort of summarized from the Bible. All things work together for good. I think that's true. There's some passages about throwing seeds to the side of the road. Some die, some start and die, some take. I mean, it's all homilies, I guess that's the
yeah,
word, but they're great. And I think Louis once came to my house and said to my wife, David is my favorite Jew. But
that's a
yeah,
compliment.
he was great, But Louis was really savvy because he didn't proselytize. We had some stories in the book about how he tried to proselytize once. Now it blew up in his face. Um, and he believes you get the message first, and then if they're into it, you can come the other message. I think he told a story about lecturing a group, and what he did is he started with the religious stuff and then the military stuff. And somebody commented, I didn't come here for a religious lecture, right? And then the opposite happened. He started the other way, and they said, well, what, I have to wait through all this stuff for the stuff about God?
Right.
You know, I admired Louis' faith, and if it wasn't for Louis, I wouldn't have been able to talk to Mickey Dora's half brother, who was really Christian and fundamentalist, and have him trust me, because he didn't trust anybody. And I understand. I respect people what they want to believe. I mean, I don't know if it'll always work out for them, but or me.
Wasn't Dora accused of being sort of a racist or an anti-Semite or something like that?
Yes, he was accused of that lately in this revisionist world.
Yeah.
I don't I don't know. I think that I think really that a lot of the Nazi regalia, the Iron Cross and the great coat and stuff, was just punking people back
Right.
then at a time when that was what you punked with. Now you punk with something else. But he did have no filter sometimes when he expressed things. Um, and in some of his letters to people, he would talk about the blacks in South Africa. But on the other hand, he was able to wander through the settlements. They loved him. He was he was caring. He was never demonstratively in any way, shape, or form, you know, anti-Semitic or anti-black.
Just an
But
imperfect human like all of us, I would imagine.
right, right. I mean, he saw the bigger picture in a lot of ways and it's happening now, So, um, whatever.
Did that inspire you to get into surfing, or were you already into that being a
Oh,
California guy?
no, yeah. When I left Teaneck, New Jersey, a pretty girl in my ninth grade class said, "You'll be able to go surfing." And I said, "What's that?" Well, I found out because I moved to a block where there were, you know, 8 or 9 boys and 3 or 4 girls, and we all had surfboards, and
Wow.
we all went to the beach. Mom drove us to the beach, or then we drove to the beach, and we surfed, and I surfed, quite a bit,
Which beach
badly.
did you
But
surf?
well, we surfed. We stayed pretty much north of Santa Monica. So my favorite beach was Leo Carrillo. There's a Secos. There's a rock out there and a beautiful little wave. I didn't go to Malibu, too crowded. I wasn't good enough. I also liked Hollywood by the Sea, and I liked C Street, where I live now in Ventura. C Street and Surfers Point, there's constant waves. It's rare. It's rarely Pacific Lake, rarely, and it's fun to surf. You just have to be in the moment.
It
Go with
smells
the
so
flow.
good over there. I love Ventura. When you cross, my daughter was born in West Hills, I think in West Hills Hospital. And if you just kept driving, you'd cross into Ventura. And I remember the times that I drove up to Santa Barbara. You see the beach, you see, not necessarily in Santa Barbara, but like I think Pismo and like all those other beaches going up there. It was
Pismo,
just,
yeah, Pismo's further north. But yeah, it's fantastic drive, especially when you just leave Ventura and you get 25 miles of beautiful cliffside Highway 1, which used to, by the way, run by the ocean when we used to drive because it didn't have that big highway. Um, in fact, the highway being built, they had to move out in order to avoid some oil wells. They had to move out into the ocean. They covered up one of our, a very well-known surfing spot. Um, so, but yeah, it's great. And Ventura, yeah, I know West Hills Hospital. My ophthalmologist is right next door.
I just remember Shoop, getting off at Shoop or
Yeah,
something like that.
you get off at Wood Lake, you go all the way up to
Right.
Sherman Way,
Sherman Way.
turn left, and then you turn right into the hospital.
Exactly.
So
That's
yeah, so
so what about
and anyway, so Mickey,
keep going.
you're gonna ask me about the sex therapist book. Is that what you're gonna ask me about?
Yes, that's exactly what I was getting. Yeah, I asked, let's talk about that. But I'm still really fascinated with Mickey and
Ask me. Go ahead. Yeah, I got
well,
time. Go
no,
ahead.
I always think of you meet people along the way that sort of serve as I wouldn't say surrogate parents or surrogate, but people that you really look up to because of how they've just kind of gone through their life. Um, with the moxie that lets of a Bernie Brillstein or
The
Mickey.
Zamperini. Those are
Well,
the guys.
yes.
Bernie was my surrogate father, and I loved him.
What'd you like so much about him or love?
He was honest, and he was tactful, and he was full of love. And I don't know. There was just it's like chemical romance. It's just like and we were a couple of Jews who liked to schwitz. You know,
Wait,
we
wait. So
like
you're a couple Jews that like the what?
sit in the schwitz.
I was just gonna ask if you ever like were in a schwitz or a sauna with them.
Uh, I think I was once, and I've also, yeah, he took me to play golf, and we just hung out. It was like he was always trying to help me right away. He says, "Can I do anything for you?" And I said, "Bernie, let's just do the book first, before I
Right.
start asking you for favors." And he did do me favors, and I don't know. He was just always he would call me every week after these things were done. We did a book of his wisdom too. The little things matter most. Um, and 50 lessons from 50 years of trying to get a job. Um, and it was, yeah, he was just great. He included me. He used to take me on his private jet to Aspen Comedy Festival after the first year, where I was in a plane with, I can't even remember, Ari Emanuel, a couple of big guys from UTA, the guy who ran HBO. Um, if we crashed, it would have been
Albrecht, I think.
It was Chris Albrecht, right?
Right.
Would have been, I would not have been made the headline.
No, no. I was on a flight with every time Jesse Jackson was on a flight of mine, and then Jamie Foxx, and I was thinking, God damn it, if this plane goes down, it's just going to be the plane that these celebrities and well-known people have gone down. So
Thanks to Bernie, for example, he inspired me to do my first book of my own, The Mailroom, in
right.
which I spent interviewed 250 people who had started in the mailrooms of talent agencies, as opposed to like the Universal Pictures mailroom, because the talent agencies, like the CIA, they know everything about every place. And I started, with Lou Weiss, who was at William Morris in 1936, all the way up to 2000, and I got everybody. It was not mostly I mean, I got Diller and I got Geffen, who I knew from before, and Shapiro and West, who managed Seinfeld, and a lot of people, and plus all the real players. And I set it up by class. Um, And now these people run Hollywood, or some of them ran it then. And that was fascinating and got well reviewed. So,
That book freaked me out only because I was trying to think like, wow, I wouldn't have lasted a week in the
right.
mailroom. I, I couldn't have been, maybe in the 50s if I was going back in time and having to pick up Mrs. Lastfogel's laundry, because you would have, I think it was one of those earlier agents who had come up from New York, like a George Shapiro or somebody. They
Yeah.
had to do that. But those are the ones that I admired. Was Bernie from that world?
Yeah. Bernie was in William Morris, 1955, you know, and with Shapiro and West and all those people. Yeah. And I don't remember, there's so much stuff, you know.
But he was like Bernie was in the army. A lot of some of these guys were in World War II,
Right.
and
Right.
then they were working in the mailroom after.
Right, exactly. And I mean, and I encountered a lot of people that I had encountered in other ways in the entertainment business, you know, like one of the guys in a mailroom with Geffen and Elliot Roberts and Jeff Wald was a guy who had been my agent for 5 minutes a couple of
Really?
years earlier. But he was nice. Yeah, they loved talking about the boot camp. And I got some great stories. I mean, that fascinates me, and especially because, as you say, they're people who lived their lives and had moxie. You have to have
Yeah.
moxie to, you know.
Do you think
And
that Geffen and Roberts, had they not had, because obviously they were youngish enough, or maybe young enough, because Geffen was, growing up as rock and roll was blooming. But did they apply the same kind of mailroom or William Morris aesthetic to the things that they did, or ethos?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, Geffen was very businesslike. Elliot was very canny and but very friendly. Elliot made it possible for me to go see so many artists. And I once told him in a fit of insanity that I wanted to be a manager and could he give me some advice? And then when I wasn't, he never let me forget it.
Really?
But he's great. I mean, he's deceased now, but
Yeah.
I went to the funeral, which was moving. And but yeah, no, I mean, it was like the 70s, early 70s. It was like loose, but there was business, you know. DFN isn't going to let that slide. But yeah, I interviewed them both for a talent and booking magazine. I don't know how I got this job, but this was like in 71. So they had not been inundated yet. I wrote a big piece. And I reminded Geffen of that. I mean, for the mailroom, you had to get Geffen because you got the big famous mailroom story about opening letters and intercepting the one where UCLA said, no, he didn't graduate from this. And he did intercept it and he did rewrite something. Okay. And, you know, then I'd interviewed him for that. And I'd seen him in many places, you know, because I was always at those concerts or backstage. And, you know, I knew that I had to pull the trigger on him at the right time, you know, because he wasn't going to be the first. And I needed him so I could get other ones. And you know, he had just done that biography with the Wall Street Journal reporter that he gave his cooperation to, and then withdrew his cooperation and got royally fucked.
Oh, really?
And yeah, he was. You know. So, well, that's when you're out to prove a point. I'm never out to prove a point. I want the point to appear to me. You know, I just want to cover the. I want to cover the. It appears. It always appears. You
What
know.
did
So go ahead.
what did you think of Almost Famous, the movie?
I liked it. I mean, I was there.
Yeah, that's why I asked.
I mean, you know, I'm not taking any credit for anything, but Cameron Crowe, myself, our friend photographer Neil Preston, Cameron's best friend, our friend Andy Kent, photographer, we all hung out in the early 70s. I used to go down to San Diego and I spent a couple nights at Cameron's place, you know, he was 15 or 16, drove him up to, you know, to up here. He would stay with one or more of us and we were all friends for a long time. I mean, we're still friends, but you know, we don't see each other much. So, I mean, yeah, Almost Famous. That was based on his Allman Brothers cover for Rolling Stone when he was 16. We were all there. I'm in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I'm not in it, or a character like me at all, but you know, the whole attitude of the rat and, you know, I
Damone.
Damone going,
Yeah,
hey, man, you got to get the attitude. It's the attitude.
right.
You know, we used to talk about that shit. And, and it's like I used to say, the attitude's great until you want to be with somebody. Then you don't have the attitude.
Oh
And,
yeah, with meeting chicks.
yeah, well, that was it was all about big parties. But, and we were all friendly competitors, and I traveled around the world with Neil Preston, and Andy bailed early and went to Utah to you know catch him, Idaho, excuse me, and I got his place in Beverly Glen Canyon.
Oh really?
So you know, so yeah, so I know I don't remember the question I was going to try to answer, but go ahead.
No. But I always get a kick out of with. I read an interview with Ben Fong Torres, and he just said, "I don't know why they made up that we didn't know he was 15. We always knew he was 15."
Sure, Ben was my editor
Right.
up in San Francisco, and Judy Sims and a couple of people down here. Yeah, of course he knew he was 15.
Did you write for Cream ever?
I wrote one story for Cream that I remember, which I loved. And I loved the editor. I don't know what her position was, but Jania Helsky, she's great. She's great. And I wrote a story about, well, there was a rumor that Colin Blunstone from the Zombies was dead. And I wrote a story that, in fact, he was dead, and I spoke to him. And
He's
I
still not
reminded him of
dead.
that when I saw him. Yeah, he's still not dead. He's great. He's one of the nicest guys I've ever met.
Well,
And so,
what was the
so yeah,
last? No, continue. I'm sorry. I was thinking about something.
yeah, I was going to say something about, was it the mailroom? I don't know.
Mailroom.
Oh,
I was talking about the guys that had the moxie, like the Bernies, and
right. Yeah, I think I answered that. There's something, it's gone with the wind. Um,
is it hard? I mean, obviously, you get to an age. I think I'm there now at 50, where a lot of people who've been very important to me are gone. And I actually started getting
yeah,
depressed about it over this last year, not just because of the pandemic, although that accelerated things, and then not really seeing people and getting into my head. And I always think about the past. Maybe I'm way too nostalgic, or I see things through rose-colored glasses. But you know, how do you? Nothing seems the same anymore. Whether it's journalism, whether it's the way people relate to one another. Do these things kind of get you down, or are you able to kind of like get through it?
well, a lot of people I know have passed away. Um, I don't like to talk about the past too much. I guess it's because I don't feel I have full stories, although you seem to have gotten stuff out of me that I don't usually remember. Um,
Yeah.
it it does get me down, but I like to look ahead, and I live very much in the moment. Things really have changed. I mean, you could say, "What are you working on now, David?" And I'd say, "Well, I'm working on the idea of whether I want to do one more book, one more oral narrative history, or something to wrap it up." But of course, I couldn't do that because I like to go out and interview 300 people, like I did for Mickey Dora around the world, 300 people. You know, and their advances aren't that big anymore. It's just really changed, and there's this whole got to be on a podcast, got to be online, got to promote yourself, which is fine. I love to do it, but I don't. I got a lot of friends who are in their late 40s and 50s who are just really, doing really well, got a lot of creative energy into various, niches, and you know, I don't have an ego, and I don't mind stepping aside. Not that I'm taking their jobs. I don't mean it in the sense that I am, if I didn't step aside, they'd be unemployed. This is not the case. There's so many people who are doing collaborative work like I did, and it's great. Um,
That's good.
so, yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind drifting slowly out to sea. I may do something. I may not. I may just read. I may just, after years of being in the rock and roll business and having 8,000 albums in my living room, and going a lot of, sometimes I just want to listen to the music instead of worry about
Yeah.
who I'm going to score. And I've done fine. I
What
mean,
about, tell me about, are you still in this classical music class that you were telling me about?
oh, that was just six classes online, the Osher Lifelong Learning Center.
Right.
Yeah, I took it. It was great. Got to listen to piano concertos.
That's amazing.
Now I'm taking three. One of them is about great comedy duos. One is about the suburbanization of America from 1800 on, and um, I don't even remember the third one.
Well,
I'll be
I
surprised
think
when I log in. Um, so it's yeah.
you like
And
jazz?
what's that?
You like jazz?
Yeah, sure.
I was
I'm
just
not.
thinking,
I'm not a big. I'm not into it a lot. Not because I don't like it.
but there's some great stuff with strings, and I always think of, when someone's talking about um, classical music, I immediately think of Duke Ellington. You know how he would do the Nutcracker, or who did Porgy and Bess? That was Miles Davis, right? Who knows? Anyway, but no, but it's fun. I don't listen to enough classical music, and I should take a lifelong learning class. But I was thinking that next time we speak, I want you to have read 17 books. We could just talk about what you read.
Well, I will tell you just to further expand on you said
Please.
but what do I get from people who have the moxie, right, and live life? And I also got that, and paired that up with how I got to ask Louis about his faith and explain these concepts to me in a non-threatening, non-judgmental way. The book I did with the then at that time sex therapist, now not exclusively sex therapist. She's a young woman in her 30s. That a friend asked me to take a look at her book proposal and maybe help her, and I did. And then I also said, "This is great." And I looked at her; she's beautiful, and I said, not that it mattered, but you have her face on the cover; it doesn't hurt.
Right.
And I said, "Can I help you write your book?" And we did, and it was great. She has, she had a great story of growing up Pentecostal in Florida, and the kind of relationships she's had, which were, sort of, gauzy and, hippie, and, and then how she decided to, want to be a therapist, went to New York, and I mean, went to college, got her degree, went to New York. And by this time she was involved with a Palestinian guy who happened to be Palestinian, no big deal, who, was pretty, well off. And this was a very different kind of relationship for her, where she was, you know, um, was hot, cold, So anyway, she went to New York, left him behind, and did her internship and opened up a practice. And her whole thrust was her name is Brandy Engler, and Silver Lake Psychology. And she wanted to help women who were dealing with low libido, because she felt that women just accepted it. Yeah, I'm 50, things are changing down there. I, I can't, I don't have it anymore. And women will come in and talk about their emotions, but not about that. And men, she thinks, will come in and talk about no emotions, but they'll talk about it if they can't get it up. Um, so she opened this practice in New York, and instead of getting women, she ended up getting all men for the first year, which was really a surprise. And I don't know why that happened, because she's not a sexual surrogate,
Right.
And but she lived out here, and that was another example of someone who really lived a hard knocks life, and who really had some moxie, and who allowed me, in the course of our interviews, to just question her, and run all my crazy ass, ideas about relationships past her. Well, what if this happens? What do you do that? And what does this mean and that mean? And that, we thought we were wasting time, but it all ended up in the book, because it was terrific.
Well,
So I learned a lot.
did she go in it with one focus, and with all of your questioning, did it at all alter?
The book is structured with seven men, seven, she's a fly on the wall, and she tells you about the sessions with seven men, some of whom are, I mean, all of whom are IDs are obscured, and a couple little composite things, but, and then two sessions with her group, and then a chapter about the boyfriend. And she went in there only wanting to write the sort of clinical book about the seven men. And I said, yeah, I think you got to tell your own story, which she was reluctant to do, but did. And it was the clothesline that hung all of the stuff, because you got to see how she learned compassion over the time with these guys. The first guy being a really handsome guy who sort of sexualized her when he looked at her and sat down like, hey doc, you look pretty hot, and then he would go out. He had a beautiful girlfriend, but he would go out and like pick up women, but he only just got their numbers. Sometimes he would go and sleep with them, but not really. And she has this whole theory about it depends on how far. It tells you what's going on with the guy depending on how far he goes. Just gets the numbers. It's one kind of thing. If he goes out with them, he goes to sleep with them, it's different. And, she was like not very, she thought, this is horrible. This guy's horrible. But she learned compassion because he wanted to know if he was capable of love, which surprised her to ask that question. And, it worked out. Then there was a bunch of couples and, with different things, somebody whose girlfriend just wanted to have romantic sex, not anything else. So he spent a lot of time looking at his porn on his computer,
Right.
because she wouldn't open up. Another guy who had this weird proclivity who had slept with his best friend on the night before his wedding. So he had a new girlfriend, and the only way he could get off was by saying, "Tell me you're cheating on me. Tell me you're cheating on me." Then it was a cross-dresser and all sorts of stuff. It was
I got to
the
read
guys
this.
that we all know.
What's the book called with the therapist?
The Men on My Couch. And it is worldwide. It is in 10 or more languages, many of them in Eastern Europe, Russia, China, places where women probably need to it really helps women understand men, and also helps women understand that, oh, if I just lose 10 pounds, he'll like me more, is not what's going on. That people really need to say what they want, and that people just want to be appreciated. I mean, there's a story in there about this guy who said he wants to have doggy style sex with his wife. And she says, she won't do it because she thinks her ass is too fat. He goes, I don't care how big her ass is. I just want her to want me.
Right.
So many things are done that are misinterpreted as I don't want you. Men will think, there are men who think that their wives gain 15 pounds, that they've lost interest in being attractive to him, which could be the case, but is not generally the case.
Does she talk about the self-loathing that men have for themselves, which certainly
Yes.
impacts? Good.
Yes, men. I mean, her theory, which is, I'm sure, certainly not exclusive to her, is that men are emotionally repressed or covered up, and these things do not just stay hidden; they erupt on the sexual playing field. It's a really terrific book.
I'm getting it today. Actually, I need to read something like that for my
It
own.
is.
As I'm a single man again, going out into the world of
Yeah,
something I don't want to go out into the world for right now.
yeah. I mean, I have a friend who read that book, and she called me and said, "I'd like to talk to you because I was like, I've been out of circulation for years, and I don't understand men then, and I do, and I didn't like it, and I read this book, and I want to talk to you about it." So, I mean, it does change perspectives.
Well,
And
good.
so, I did that, and then I don't know what else. I did Have you heard of Caring Bridge?
No.
Caring Bridge is like the web Facebook for people who are really sick and have cancer and various other stuff, medical things. And it's like, it's a place where rather than, say, hey, I've got cancer and then listen to 100 phone calls, you post stuff on there, it's free. And, you can direct people to your story, your explanation. So the woman who started, very successful, had a book, and I went out and interviewed a bunch of people who were, really sick. And
Right.
and that, I'm sure I've done there's other stuff I've done, but I don't.
Well, I mean, you can't get a whole life in a whole career in an hour and change. But I'm thrilled to have talked to you. I know I'd written about you before when and had interviewed you, but I since had read both Louis books. I the Bernie Brillstein book, which I'm sorry to say I
Oh,
did find
great.
I found it in a Goodwill, but it was in L.A. and I was glad to get that. And just it's just always a pleasure to talk to you. And
These are human, yeah, these are humanized people. That's the thing I try to do, just be them, humanize them.
well, as I told you, I'm embarking on something like that right now, and uh, won't mention her name, but we'll talk about it off campus because I certainly I need that advice. And you already
Sure,
gave me
I'm
the good
happy.
advice as far as hiring a transcriber or getting the transcription software.
Well, I've never used a transcription software, and I'm afraid my transcriber has seemed to have lost interest in that after 30 years.
Right.
Um, but it's really important. I may have said this to you. My transcriber didn't just do raw transcripts. She's a writer herself, and she would digest stuff and make it into edible pieces. That like if there was four back and forth on one question, she put it all together.
Wow.
And it was easier for her. But yeah, I'm happy to pass on whatever bullshit I know, to ease
It's
your
all I
way,
want.
ease your way. The bottom line, there's no rules. There are no rules. You make up your own rules. Doesn't matter how it looks. Just write it, write it, write it. Are you writing about somebody or in her voice?
In her voice.
Oh, great. See, that's easy.
It's gonna be her, with me. It's
Right.
right. It's
Yeah,
it's
I love that. That saves you from having to. I mean, I'm lazy. I know that if you read the Brillstein, well, if you read The Mailroom or if you read Mickey Dora, you would see what I think are really, really good introductions. And I can definitely write. But I just am more comfortable, you know, instead of writing, he's as tall as his hat and thin as his house in San Francisco, I would just want to have I can do their voices. I have to ask a lot of questions. I have to do research. They can't be fools. I don't want them to look like fools.
right.
Um, People say you write fiction or nonfiction. I go, well, I never write fiction on purpose. So I don't know. I mean, anyway, so I don't know if and I know I've chattered about my books and
Yeah, you should
any
give yourself more
overarching
credit.
philosophical question you want to.
No, no, it's great. It's I'm interested like you. I'm interested in people, and unfortunately, I don't have the so-called moxie to market myself, but that's something that I have to learn a little more because a lot of this stuff is new because I came from writing as well, but not from the writing that that you came from. Like I wasn't a stringer. I wasn't, for I've written articles for magazines, like the actual, hardcover thing, but it's been internet. I kind of started when the internet started. And I
So you,
imagine, go ahead.
I say, so you suffer from low pay.
100%. I remember I wrote to Lucian Truscott, the writer, and I said, how does someone get into being a freelance writer? Because I was a staff writer at a place. He's like, I don't know. You tell me. This whole fucking world right now has changed. I don't know how to
Well,
get hired. And these are great writers.
well, I mean, right. Lucian is terrific, and there's a big difference between his daily rants and his writing about himself, which is really great.
Yeah.
but he's been around for a long time. And yeah, it's really tough. You get a gig at salon and then you're gone, or this or that, and because the people who run all this stuff don't think anybody has an attention span. Or I wish I knew. I mean, I have lots of friends who are, you really have to hustle and have a side hustle, and your side hustle has to have a side hustle. And getting hired somewhere is not, I don't think that's the gig anymore. I mean, I just don't know where you have to get hired with the idea that you'll be fired.
Right.
It's tough. I think you do have the moxie. You're doing this. I don't have the moxie to do this. I don't, like I said, I don't have anything. I don't know. I mean, I suppose I'm still interested in people, or maybe I don't like people. I
Maybe
don't know.
not.
I just, I pun my way through life. It's, I will say that if I retired today, although I can't retire because I'm already tired, it's, I don't feel like I didn't do it. I did more than I expected I would ever do. And I'm happy, and I'm, I can't complain. I'm sure there's something out there that would spark me. I have a couple of ideas. It really takes getting out for me to see them person to person. I may be like one of those aging male movie stars who needs a young, beautiful co-star to convince people that he's still virile. Um, just somebody to work with. I have ideas. I wish somebody would give me a corner office and a budget.
I think
But
you're at the height of your virility, I would
oh,
imagine. Yeah.
well, I've gotten rid of the doll. So
Well, thanks a lot. Thank you for talking to me. We'll catch up, okay?
yeah, when are you
I don't
doing
know.
with
I'll edit it and maybe by Friday.
okay, let me know so I can tell my 2 fans.
Good.
Okay.
And I'll get 2 more fans. Anyway, thanks, man. I'm glad you're doing well, and I'm glad that you got a nice bill of health from the doctor. For now,
Thanks for your interest.
I
Talk
am.
to you soon.
All right, David. Take care.
Okay.
Bye bye.